In Avatar the Last Airbender, Aang went through a lot over the course of the entire series, so let's dive into it. In season 1, when we meet Aang, he is this hopeful, optimistic kid, but he's also pretty immature, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that he just is unaware of the horrors of the war that's going on in the world right now. Then in season 2, things change for him when Appa gets kidnapped. Now, first off, this is a senseless crime. Appa didn't do anything wrong that justified him getting kidnapped. And the second thing is that Appa is the only thing that connects Aang to his culture since they've all been wiped out. Appa is this symbol of hope for Aang that maybe one day in the future the Air Nation will be an Air Nation again. So with losing Appa, Aang loses his optimism and his hope. And of course, when he finds Appa, that does play a part in the restoration of those things. And then in season 3, we see Aang in a very similar place that Zuko was in season 1. He is trying to regain his honor after a failure. He's under an intense amount of pressure with needing to defeat the Fire Lord, and he also feels like he needs to do it on his own. But over the course of that season, he does grow to appreciate his team more so and understand that he's not in it alone and he can use his team to help him, and that's why they're there for him. And then in the series finale, Aang has become this honorable avatar where he has defeated the Fire Lord and showed off his incredible amount of strength. And he shares that victory with everyone around him that helped him get to that point. When talking about Katara in Avatar the Last Airbender, a lot of people like to lean towards her being the mom of the group. And while that is true, that is not what I want to talk about when it comes to Katara. I want to talk about how we see her face her traumas over the course of the series. Now, it's very obvious that Korra has been through a lot before the series began. She loses her mother due to the Fire Nation unaliving her, and then shortly after that, her dad basically abandons her and goes off to fight in the war against the Fire Nation. And obviously, all of those things are result of the Fire Nation being the Fire Nation. We see that there's no way around it for her. She has to face these things head on. First off, with her dad, when they're first reunited, of course, she's very passive aggressive towards him, but she has to get to that moment where she is completely vulnerable and just shares all her feelings about him leaving. And then she can move on and have this better reunification and relationship with him and is able to work with him. And then with the Fire Nation, rightfully so, she has a lot of malice towards them and wants revenge, which is why she goes on that journey with Zuko to seek out the man who was the leader that raided her village and took her mom away from her. But in that moment of her getting her revenge, instead of taking this man out like he took her mom out, there is this whole humanization thing that goes on where she's seeing him face to face. So now she's got an actual person that she can blame this stuff on and see with her own two eyes, but also she then humanizes herself for him by letting him see the horrors of what he has done, not only to her, but like probably across the whole world. And interestingly enough, this is one of the biggest differences between Katara and Jet because Jet refused to see the humans behind the Fire Nation, whereas obviously, like I just said, Katara was able to see that. Now, there are very specific things that a lot of people have talked about when it comes to Sokka and his transformation over the course of the series, but there's one thing in particular that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about that I do want to talk about with this video. And that thing is his thoughts on bending and his feelings towards the spirituality aspect of the universe that he lives in. Sokka is a huge skeptic. In the first season, he basically calls bending magic and not so much in a good way. And he also says some things that leads me to believe that he didn't really believe in like the reincarnation of the different avatars. And again, in season 2, when they're in the swamp, he tries to give a scientific reason as to why they were seeing what they were seeing. And again, with the fortune teller, we see this pattern that he's just the skeptic and doesn't really believe in like the spirituality, and all of those things. Now, I know that the reasonings behind him feeling this way have to do with a couple things. One, he's not a bender, so he just doesn't have that connection to it that Katara and Aang have. And also, when it comes to the Avatar and reincarnation stuff, the Avatar has been gone for 100 years. Though it's safe to say that everyone in his water tribe just believe that the Avatar doesn't exist because they're so far removed from the generation when the Avatar did exist. But with all of the time that Sokka spent with Team Avatar, watching Aang and Katara get better at bending, seeing Katara use her bending healing, and learning more about the Avatar and his past lives, in season three, he is completely on board with everything. And we see that with his constant praise for Toph learning how to metal bend. We also know that Sokka feels really inadequate because he's not a bender, but over time he comes to realize that that is not where your worth lies, and being a bender doesn't make you a better person. We meet Toph in season two, and she's very much like this individual, independent person where she doesn't want to be a part of the group and just kind of wants to go off on her own, do her own thing, and just help Aang learn earthbending. And we know that she wasn't super fond of Katara because she was motherly and she always followed the rules. Katara was the one person who was kind of always just telling her what to do, which definitely reminded her of her own parents. And that was also a reminder that she had to leave her parents, whom she loved, but she needed to leave because she needed to fulfill her destiny with the Avatar. And I know she felt a lot of hurt because these people who she loved, that were her parents that were supposed to care for her, were the ones who were holding her back from her destiny and from becoming this amazingly strong bender that she was in the end of the series. But over time, she did let her guard down and was able to build these strong, wonderful relationships with the rest of the team, and they basically became her found family. Zuko probably had the most well-written transformation in television history, animated or not. In season one, he has such a strong sense of urgency to restore his honor because this is where his value lied. This is what he thought his purpose was. And this is what we saw him doing over the course of the season. But in season two, with the help of Uncle Iroh, he starts to ask himself the question, what really is my actual purpose? What do I want out of life? That has nothing attached to his sister or his father or even Uncle Iroh. And we really see this struggle surface with him when he gets really sick, and he does come out of that a different person. But he regresses when he has the opportunity to go home and, in the eyes of his father, regain his honor. And he kind of has to go through this whole transformation process again in a way when he's on the beach and he talks about how angry with himself he is because he's so confused about right and wrong, because for so long he thought that one way was right, but now he's realizing that it's actually wrong, and vice versa. And we know that in the end he did choose the path of joining Team Avatar and helping restore balance in the world. I think the reasons why this is such a wonderfully written redemption arc is one, because we really do see him go through the whole entire process of this transformation. It's not rushed. We see him struggle and get to this better point. Two, he is sorry and does try to make up for all of the horrible things that he's done to Team Avatar. And we see this with him helping them against Sparky Sparky Boom Man and going on that journey with Sokka, getting his dad out of prison, and also going on the journey with Katara and helping her find the guy that unalived her mom. And lastly, something that I think is really important is that there is a real reason as to why he is the way he is. He's definitely a product of his environment and just trying to do the right thing according to the people around him. But him leaving that and being banished and being able to see the world led him to understand the world in a different light and a new perspective that led him to become who he was at the end of the series. Azula was the golden child of the two, and she was the one that everyone really did believe was going to follow in the footsteps of her father. When we meet Azula, it's very obvious that she works on a different level of intimidation. She uses fear to control people instead of trust, and she even says in the series that trust is for fools. But this is one of the reasons why her downfall happened and why her friends betrayed her, because fear doesn't last. With May, we obviously see that love was the reason why she went against Azula. She says in the series that she loved Zuko more than she feared Azula. And with Ty Lee, she trusted May more than she trusted Azula, and that's why she was so quick to turn on Azula and stand by May in that whole situation. And then once Azula lost that fear hold on May and Ty Lee, she lost her power and control over them. And those two things were directly connected to her identity, which is why she ended up in the place that she did at the end of the series.